I'm Colin, and welcome to another episode of The Discussion, where I publish academic insights into the arts, education, business, politics, and more. In this week's episode of The Discussion, I'll be going through how podcasts have influenced the way we see the American justice system, and specifically how Serial has done this. Serial is an American podcast produced and hosted by Sarah Koenig, who explores the 1999 case of Hae Ming Lee. Her accused killer, Adnan Syed, was a high school student in Baltimore, Maryland, and a former boyfriend at the time. Sarah is an investigative political journalist who has a long history in covering cases and topics similar to this. From her background in radio, she creates an engaging and interesting story of something that would normally be uninteresting. Sarah Koenig uses podcasts as her primary format, even though a non-traditional media in sense, to explore her underlying concerns of the US justice system. With this format in mind, it enables a wider audience to be reached, whereas a traditional format would resonate to a niche minority. Throughout her podcast, her tone engages the audience, enabling them to be taken on a journey. Within the case of Hae, Adnan comes from a conservative Muslim family and is the convicted murderer of Hae. Throughout the conviction, the case was relying upon the testimony of one person named Jay Wilds. The state then uses Jay as their primary witness and bases the case almost entirely on what he said, in what seems to be a cover-up of his own involvement. Sarah Koenig expresses her concerns through a retrospective narrative laced with skepticism. This effect is created through Koenig telling the story and then coming back to previously stated facts and explaining it further. This doubling back on an idea allows for Koenig to further communicate her apprehension. Another technique used to engage her audience and lead them through the timeline is the placement of music in between parts of presented information. The somber tonality of the music allows time for the audience to process and further understand what Koenig has just said, whilst keeping them engaged. Additionally, this placement of music accompanies the initial shock of what has just been said. Her use of shock factor not only continues to engage the listener, but also provides a call to action. From Koenig voicing her underlying concerns, the listener has a feeling of being called to action, drawing their attention to the website of the podcast called serialpodcast.org. Calling to action makes the listener want to investigate what happened further, but also keeps them tuned in for the other episodes to come. Complementing the non-conventional podcast format is a website. This more traditional digital format, being the accompanying website, acts as a hub for further information. This additional information ignites a personal connection to the case, leaving the responder aware of Sarah's underlying concerns with the American justice system. Continuing the idea that the website is set up in a blog style, a post by Dana Chivis, a producer of Serial, reaffirms what is said in episode 10, that
cops and prosecutors in this case were driven by anti-Muslim feeling, by racism, and by racism alone.
But also hints to biases present within the handling of the case. The underlying concerns may be due to Adnan being Muslim. The state may have treated him unfairly, but also unjustly. Once again, Sarah Koenig is able to explore her concerns through Serial, only emphasizing the effectiveness of the medium. Another issue seen through the handling of this case, only possible with the website, is the updates of the case even many years later. One example of this is the post from October 2015, a whole year from the airing of the episode, and 15 years after the conviction, is a new testimony explaining how the cell tower technician later found withheld evidence. The effect that he said this had is that this new information would have changed his testimony, but also possibility the conviction of Adnan Syed. Through the use of the website, it acts as another effective medium for Sarah to convey her thoughts and understandings of the case to an even wider audience. This wider audience then allows for her apprehensions of the US justice system to reach further into the community and possibly to spark change. Overall, with the use of the podcast and the website as two effective mediums, Sarah Koenig was able to tell her concerns of the American justice system to a wider audience. This exploration of her concerns is what boils down to a great podcast done right. Although Koenig may bring her own preconceptions, she is blatantly transparent about this when investigating. If you have enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and give this video a thumbs up. And this has been The Discussion.